Week 2 of the final series, Roosters and Penrith, of course, have the week off. Newcastle Knights and the Brisbane Broncos had an early departure. Good news for both those teams, though. A large number of their players will continue to train in preparations for the Kangaroo Tour. Now, Saturday's game between the Warriors and the Raiders will be a flamboyant one if the Warriors do continue their ways from last week. The form of Francis Melly, who scored 5 tries, and his partner Clinton Torpey, who between them have scored 39 tries, make them the most lethal centre-wing pairing in the competition. But for mine, Richard Villasanti, at the age of 23, is fast becoming one of the best front rowers in the game. Now, his intimidating physical presence and crushing defence, I think, is a real X-factor for the Warriors. And what an interesting dilemma he now poses for the Australian selectors. Now he's declared himself he can play for the Kangaroos. Now, by all reports, Australian coach Chris Anderson already had him penciled in. Well, to the Storm Bulldogs match on Sunday, Melbourne have lost 7 straight to the Dogs. And look, I think it will soon be 8. I believe the boys from Belmore will respond from last weekend's loss. They do have the best defensive record in the competition. But having said that, Storm halfback Matt Orford, who is the #1 halfback as far as form is concerned, will do his best to open up the Dogs' defence. So for the weekend's games, I'm going for the Warriors over the Raiders, and I think the Bulldogs will go through to next week. Enjoy your footy. Catch you next week.
I didn't ask for this. I'm sort of the meat in the sandwich. It makes it a bit difficult.
She's a mother of 4 and a kindergarten teacher, but Julie admits there's always more to learn when it comes to raising children.
The most important thing that I've learnt from this course is to listen to what your children are saying to you. Take the time to sit down with your children and listen to what they need.
She was one of 50 people who attended the course on peaceful parenting at Cahaiba Public School. Over 8 weeks, the program promoted ways of preventing problems at home rather than trying to solve them. The mums and dads were given homework and assignments, which involved conducting a family conference.
I think that she was good like the way she was, but I was also happy that she went to the course, and I think she learned a few things about how to talk to us.
One of the messages for parents was that you can't change anyone else's behaviour, you can only change your own. For Julie, the course was especially significant as she's been raising 4 children on her own since her husband died 3.5 years ago.
This course has taught me I can't change what's happened in my life, and although I can't change that, I have to look forward to keeping our family together.
And it seems the sound advice has also rubbed off on the youngest member of her family.
The best things parents can do is probably love your child as much as they possibly can and talk to them in a nice manner and make them feel welcome.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The quiet hills that hug the outskirts of Bulahdelah were a thing of the past today. It was hill climb day for a huge field of speed machines, many challenging for the state crown in various classes. For some it was about raw power. Brett Thomas wrestling his 6-litre supercharged Falcon up the stretch of O'Sullivan's Way bitumen, leaving more than just a roar in his wake. It was a day where speed is the key. Road signs are still handy, if only for directions. Karua's Michael King must have missed that one. The driver unhurt, while his escort scraped through okay as well. John Lodge Jr. just loves these days. At 14, he can't drive home, but he can borrow Dad's escort for a quick trip up the mountain. But no one was going to catch national champ Peter Gumley. Racing his Formula Libre, he wrapped up his 7th state crown today.
Newcastle has plenty of landmarks, and that list will grow when this area between the Crown Plaza Hotel and the soon-to-be-completed Boardwalk project is developed by Honeysuckle Development Corporation as Harbour Square.
The corporation's very excited about this because this is the, if you like, the showcase of our public domain at this end of Honeysuckle.
This new public space will have multiple uses, including an amphitheatre and seating for outdoor music and entertainment, a public art water feature and raised seating and eating areas. The derelict Merriweather Street finger wharves finally go to make way for a modern wharf. An extension of the foreshore promenade is also included in the work. And for those who've been waiting to walk the harbour foreshore from Nobbies to Tighes Hill, the Honeysuckle Development Corporation says Harbour Square will bring that journey one step closer to reality.
Well, when we've finished this section of promenade with the Harbour Square, we're also going to provide a temporary promenade that will go from this area right round to the marinas.
Harbour Square and the promenade extension are due for completion early next year. Gary Blair, NBN News. Rain may have been forecast for today, but Hunter Valley farmers decided to stick with their irrigation. It's a sign of the lack of optimism about the weather. Farmers Association Dairy Committee Chairman Arthur Burns is hoping the current drop continues for both the Hunter and Western grain producing areas.
This is nothing yet. If we can get 2 or 3 inches, 4 inches over the next week, yeah, it would make a difference. But again, from our point of view, it's most important to have it out west where the grain crops are grown.
The drought is now so severe that the state government has asked the Commonwealth to let 800 local beef and dairy producers access exceptional circumstances drought assistance. High grain prices, the cost of irrigation and low milk payments have taken their toll on dairy farmers.
Twin thing of increased costs and low prices has made it very, very tough, and a lot of people are right on the brink whether they'll be staying or not.
With farm dams already dry and cracking, weather experts hope the worst of El Niño may be over.
We do anticipate a normal rainfall season this coming summer, so fingers crossed, bit of patience, and hopefully we'll get what we're after.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
After wins against Auckland and the Spirit in the first 2 rounds of competition, United is riding high on the table.
6 points from 2 games we couldn't do any more.
The same squad as last week will take on Marconi this weekend before the side returns to Newcastle the following week against Parramatta. Coach Crook is keeping a close eye on Milan Blagojevich and Robbie Middleby, both with injury concerns. There may have been more moths than spectators at the home ground last weekend, but the club hopes that with the league season drawing to an end, more people will visit the soccer.
No, overall very happy with Friday night's first home game due to the disruption with the stadium, but yeah, it's early days, and I think with the completion of the rugby league this weekend, the winter season officially finishes and the NSL can kick into gear.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. They're designed to clear trees away from power lines, but we've also seen them chasing action heroes, devouring buildings and dissecting cars.
Who's not going to like this?
But this one being developed in Newcastle is the real thing. At 13 metres tall, the 10-blade Sky Saw is the king of all power tools. A Newcastle engineering company is developing the powerful tree trimmer with the project close to completion.
What we've developed is a sky saw. It's a saw that hangs beneath the helicopter, and it's designed to cut the sidewall of high tension power line easements.
Former Westpac Rescue helicopter pilot Mark Crumlin is a partner in the project and says the saw, that is powered by a 115 horsepower boat outboard motor, is the largest of its kind in the world.
We've designed something that is the world's biggest. It's designed to cut at greater speeds, and it's designed to get into areas that ground crews can't cut.
Power companies in the US, Canada and France have already expressed an interest in the saw, which will be trialled under a helicopter in the United States later in the year. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
United's number one keeper Tom Willis is one of two glovemen to win selection in the 22-strong squad to tour the United Arab Emirates for 10 days before returning for the World Cup in late November. For Jobe Wheelhouse, it'll be the 18-year-old's debut for the young Socceroos after the World Cup was postponed earlier this year. Their gain, however, is United's loss, as the pair will miss a double header in 2 weeks' time and further games later in the season. It's tomorrow night that Ryan Griffiths wants to start in the run-on side against Marconi, and despite the side's unbeaten run this season, his performances off the bench are making it hard to leave him out.
Obviously you want to start every game, and obviously I want to try and follow a bit in what Joel did last year, so I want to try and get towards the 10-goal mark this season, and that's my goal.
Good news too for Milan Blagojevic, who got through today's final training session after being troubled by a calf muscle tear. He's been cleared to play. To basketball, and the Hunter Pirates head south tomorrow night as well to play the West Sydney Razorbacks. The Pirates will then back up again on Monday to play Wollongong in what's a tough start to their NBL campaign. Despite the disguise playing strip, Newcastle University men's touch was hard to miss. Reaching the gold medal match, it was University of Queensland which got the perfect start. The home side managed to get one back before half-time, but were always chasing, going down 4-3. Newcastle men also found themselves in a close one for the basketball gold medal match. The home side had all the moves, while things dropped University of South Australia's way as well until overtime. That's when Newcastle got the edge to win 68-64. What a start by Wollongong in the final of the women's soccer. Melissa Hoare's free kick, a real life bandit like Beckham. Newcastle levelled late in the half, but was soon forced to chase again. A Megan Shepherd penalty goal took everyone to extra time and then to a penalty shootout, which finally ended Wollongong's way. It left the men to try and finish things on a winning note for the hosts as they faced off against old rivals, University of New South Wales. Chances came and went in the first, and neither were able to capitalise, but the result isn't going to affect overall standings, with the games to officially end at full time as well. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Minister for the Hunter, Michael Costa, did the explaining of how Newcastle's proposed multi-purpose terminal fits into the state government's new Ports Growth Plan. With demolition of the former BHP Steelworks site now into the closing stages, the area has been officially earmarked for a future container handling facility.
That clarity now enables everybody associated with these activities, and remember, it's primarily the private sector to make the decisions they have to make about port activity.
But Newcastle won't be developed until Sydney's Port Botany terminal reaches peak capacity and the stevedoring industry is ready to invest.
Planning is critical in relation to private investment. Certainly stevedoring and maritime activities primarily in our country are private sector activity.
However, there is optimism the MPT will attract a developer.
Newcastle is a very significant port, and we will play a role in the development and the economic driving of the state of New South Wales.
Having already received what has been described as encouraging levels of interest, Newcastle Port Corporation is soon expected to call for detailed proposals from private developers, with the aim of having the MPT operational on this site as early as 2007. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Still living in Newcastle, Travis Dodd commutes to his new club in Sydney almost every day. But this Friday night, it'll be a familiar drive down the road to play against his former club. The pre-match banter from old teammates too is expected.
I don't think it'll be long before Wilso starts sending his poems, but no, not yet. But yeah, I'll catch up with the boys. I speak to a few of them still, so yeah.
Dodd left on less than happy terms with Newcastle officials, agreeing to terms with the club. He then signed with the Power. The move also took the midfielder to striker, a switch which paid off handsomely against the Football Kings at the weekend, scoring 3 goals off the bench, only the 5th substitute to do so in the NSL. He hopes it's enough to earn a start against his former club.
Playing with a lot of them last season, I know a lot of their traits and this and that can definitely be used to my advantage. But I guess they played with me as well, so they know what I'm going to play like as well.
Once a crowd favourite at Newcastle, his reception back at Energy Australia Stadium, though, may take some getting used to.
If they get up me, that's fine. It's part of the game, and yeah, we'll see how it happens.
Being overweight, especially after menopause, increases a woman's risk of breast cancer. As part of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the Cancer Council is encouraging women to eat 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit each day and become more active. A recent study found if women exercise for at least 30 minutes each day, they had up to a 40% lower risk of developing breast cancer than those who were not active. But doctors say the best way of beating the disease is to have a mammogram.
We particularly want the women aged 50 to 69 to go and have their mammogram. It might save their life.
In fact, it's been estimated breast screening has saved more than 100 lives in the Hunter in the last decade. And it's heartening to know, because of modern medicine, 3/4 of women diagnosed with the disease today will survive.
For women who have a small breast cancer found on a mammogram, perhaps a centimetre, 5-cent piece, those women can expect to have a completely normal life, and most of them will avoid a mastectomy as part of their treatment.
Women over 40 can have a free mammogram by calling 13 20 50. Lyndall Derrig, NBN News.
Job security, that was the main reason for the statewide stop work meeting. The Health Services Union is concerned jobs may be lost if, firstly, the Carr government decides to adopt a plan to outsource non-clinical positions, and secondly, if the public-private partnership to redevelop the Mater Hospital goes ahead.
History shows whenever there is a privatisation of a public system, there are job losses, and Hunter Health don't have a good record.
But Hunter Health says the public-private partnership is not privatisation by stealth.
So this is not privatisation of public health. This is about just providing state-of-the-art bricks and mortar. And we believe it can work very well based on what we've seen in the UK.
There are also assurances no jobs will be lost.
And our staff can choose whether they go to work for the private sector. If they do not want to, if they do not choose to, we will find them a job in Hunter Health.
Acting Health Minister Frank Sartor described the industrial action as premature.
The government's simply seeking more flexibility in how it spends its health dollar. The union has some legitimate issues. I think it's a matter of the parties continuing a dialogue.
The region's hospitals experienced only minimal disruption, with doctors and nurses not joining the 4-hour walkout. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Like his teammates, Rudy van Vuren can't wait to represent his African country on the rugby field. But for the Namibian fly half, it's almost familiar territory. He played in cricket's World Cup just months ago.
But it's fantastic to play cricket and rugby. I enjoy both of them. I've been playing them since I was a boy.
Also a medical doctor, he says being a dual international makes sporting sense.
The big advantage is that you don't have an off-season, so you can't get too unfit.
The disadvantage is that injuries stick, and Van Vuren is trying to shake one off before Namibia's debut next week. The side has settled into training in its adopted Australian base of Port Stephens. Having drawn in the so-called pool of death against the likes of Australia, Ireland and Argentina, the players are realistic about their chances.
We're not professionals, and we also see it that way, so we're only going to do our best.
They'll have a band of Port Stephens supporters, as well as pressure from back home to do well.
And we promised them, so we will definitely try our best and play positive rugby, and hopefully we will do good.
Namibia plays Argentina in Gosford on Tuesday. Natasha Beyersdorf, NBN News.
Mental Health Week is the perfect time to focus on mental health issues and well-being. And the region's mental health groups and services turned out in force for today's gathering to share their knowledge and experiences. Social worker of more than 20 years, Matthew Garrett, highlighted the importance of families in helping in the recovery of sufferers.
We do know that if families are well resourced and have good knowledge and coping strategies, that the benefits also go to the person who has a mental illness, particularly in the areas of relapse prevention and rehospitalisation.
Research shows education and support for both patients and their families can aid in reducing stress and anxiety.
The families need to have the skills in order to cope when things perhaps go off the rails. If they're left without the skills to deal with that situation, that only intensifies the stress and anxiety that's already surrounding a pretty difficult situation.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
After a 1-1 draw with Marconi last week, United will be back on home turf this Friday night and ready to tackle Parramatta.
We beat them twice in the regular season last year, but they beat us twice in the when it got down to the final series. In the year before, we had a draw and a loss. So it's a fairly sort of even sort of swing.
With Scott Thomas suspended and Job Wheelhouse, Greg Owens and Steve Eagleton injured, youth players Peter McPherson and Mitchell Wallace will step up, joining last year's Youth Player of the Year Josh Mitchell, who's enjoying his debut season in First Division.
We've got a few injuries in that, but when back's against the wall, hopefully we'll be able to get a good result.
The coach is happy with the side's performance in the first 3 rounds.
I think if somebody had said to me, 7 points out of a possible 9 in the first 3 games, I'd have certainly settled for that. I think the boys have stepped up each week that we've played.
And he's not too worried about Friday night's Rugby World Cup stealing spectators from the soccer.
Well, who's going to watch Australia? You need to win. So if England were playing, I'd say there you might have a problem.
Coming from the pommy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't want to rush
Each roadside tribute tells of a family's grief, but in the Hunter, the NRMA says there are too many such sad stories. Last week's horror crash near Aberdeen survived by just one young member of the Wickniat family, a case in point.
It's a tragic example of the condition of our roads. We want better and safer roads.
The NRMA says the region has more road-related deaths and injuries than anywhere else in the state. Last year, the Hunter recorded 94 fatal crashes, 100 deaths and 4,000 road-related injuries. The motoring body says more money needs to be spent on the region's roads. It's lobbying both the federal and the state government to boost funding urgently.
Every time one of our members or motorists fill up the fuel tank, 38 cents goes to the government, of which only 6 cents is spent on roads.
Mr Turnbull is calling on local mayors to join the fight by detailing priorities in their regions.
I think the extension of the F3, the bypass through Curry or near Curry, is extremely important. It's been talked about at meetings of Hunter Regional Councils. I would support it from a regional point of view.
The NRMA will host a meeting of the state's mayors next month before stepping up its campaign with government. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. The issue reached crisis point during the busy winter months. On this night, ambulances were delayed by up to 3 hours. Hunter Health has since made changes to rein in waiting times.
We have set ourselves a target of a 30-minute turnaround for ambulances, and we've been able to meet that in around 80% of cases during September, and we're seeing further improvement during October.
It's crediting changes to hospital systems, including freeing up beds by transferring elderly patients waiting for nursing home placements. The Ambulance Union has welcomed the improvement, hoping it will be sustained.
But the real test will be during next winter, when we have another peak in demand, and we're certainly hoping to have our systems improved and in place ready for that.
Meantime, a team from the John Hunter is preparing to play an important role in the Rugby World Cup. The 6-member disaster response team will be based at Gosford Hospital during Central Coast Games, on standby in case of any major emergencies.
So while we practice, this gives us an opportunity to actually do it and actually get in there and learn.
They'll be ready for the first Gosford game on Saturday night. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Last year's Sydney to Hobart Line Honours runner-up was beaten to Hobart by 1 hour and 40 minutes. The Grundig crew hopes improvements to the boat will close that gap this year. The 18-metre speed machine is upside down in a shed in Newcastle, stripped of paint, mast, rigging, motor and rudders, and a team of 6 men have just 2 weeks to get it ready for a lead-in race from Gosford to Lord Howe Island.
We're making the boat lighter and more efficient, but yes, we've tried very hard to make the boat lighter. We've tried very hard to take weight out of the rig. Once we take weight out of the rig, the boat becomes more stable, and because of that we can take weight out of the keel.
Most of the Lord Howe fleet will stop at the island to rest, but Grundig's 4.2-metre keel prevents it from entering the sheltered waters.
The boat's too deep to get into the lagoon, and beside that we really haven't got time to stop. We've got to get the boat back, we've got to do the modifications that there's a number of things we're going to try out along the way during the Lord Island race.
The crew hopes the changes to the boat will be approved, allowing a Boxing Day assault on Bass Strait.
At all costs, that is the program, everything, all the races leading up to it, all the races we do in the year, there's only really one goal, and that's to win the Sydney Hobart race.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
For a 26-year-old, Russell Richardson has done everything in rugby league but win an NRL premiership. He's represented Australia in 3 tests and even retired. But the lure of playing with a class team like the Newcastle Knights was too good an opportunity to pass up.
To be in a winning team, in a winning culture, and most definitely a happy club, it will be something different, I'll tell you that much. And, from what I've seen, the Newcastle guys are a great bunch of blokes. And
He moved to Newcastle earlier this year to run his inner city pub after a frustrating 2 seasons with the Rabbitohs. And although he's looking forward to playing with some of the best players in the game today, Richardson isn't setting unrealistic goals.
Just to play first grade. And as I said, to play first grade in a winning team such as Newcastle, in a great city like Newcastle, that'll make me happy. You know, anything I get on top of that is a bonus. But first and foremost is to play first grade.
3 other players have also agreed to terms with the Knights, including Newcastle Western Suburbs duo David Goodridge and Trent Sorkeld, as well as West Tigers' Clinton Hill. Colin Robinson, NBN News. It was always going to be a tough ask for the men golfers to catch Queensland's Andrew Dott, but Windsor's Julian Reynolds set about that from the first hole. Only one other player had any chance of figuring in the finish, Wonjun Lee. He finished yesterday 4 shots off the lead and early on looked like he was travelling well, but some wayward shots didn't help his cause and he had to settle for third. Not so Julian Reynolds. He needed more than a great round to claim the win, but he did manage to go on and finish second. But with US amateur champ Belmont's Nick Flanagan looking on, Andrew Dott did enough to join an illustrious list of winners. The women's draw, though, was looking a little closer. 14-year-old Bankstown golfer Sarah O went into the final round with a share of the lead, but couldn't reproduce yesterday's round. Meanwhile, Kate Thomas from Bathurst had her moments with shots like this, but the girls were always going to have to chase New South Wales Golf Club's Sarah Kemp. The number 1 ranked female golfer in Australia was too good, winning the women's title. Colin Robinson, NBN News.
Who said this World Cup was all hard work? Based on the Central Coast for the first few weeks of Rugby's World Cup, the Irish were only a short bus ride away from the vintage golf course. Although a great diversion from the rigours of training, Keith Gleeson certainly isn't back in the country to showcase his swing. Irish-born, the flanker grew up to captain Australian under-19 and 21 teams before being overlooked for higher rep honours, prompting a return to the green grass of home. Ireland play Australia in 3 weeks.
You know, every time you play against some of the better teams in the world, you want to be able to walk away with your head held high. For me, there's obviously a little bit extra that back here, in front of friends and family here, that, you know, yes, I want to put in a great performance every time on the field.
While conditions weren't perfect today, it was the Greg Norman designed layout that proved the real challenge. Rated one of the best centres in world rugby, Brian O'Driscoll reckons his ability on the fairway is in stark contrast, but likes to try anything, especially surfing, to get away from all things rugby.
I'm sure by the end of the tour, hopefully we might have it somewhat, I wouldn't say mastered, but something better than the way we started out.
After trouncing Romania at the weekend, Namibia is next on the Irish playing list before Argentina and then Australia to round out their pool games. On the front row of the grid after a sizzling final qualifying session, the teenager was lucky to make the start at all for the Malaysian GP. This was the 17-year-old on the first day of practice, hitting the hard stuff after a huge high-side fall. It was a poor start that he felt in the main race, but he took just 5 laps to fight back from 8th to 2nd. Spurred on by fellow young gun and Spaniard Jorge Lorenzo, Stoner went about chasing down the lead. Pre-race fall aside, it was a ride taking plenty of courage, given he still hasn't fully recovered from 2 broken collarbones and a fractured wrist. But with another podium finish in sight, Stoner dropped out in a big way. Still on bikes, but with pedal power, it was a tough finish too for Newcastle's national road race champion, Olivia Gollan. Headlining the Australian team at the World Championship in Canada, the 30-year-old went into the Blue Ribbon event in great form. Featuring the best from 32 countries, Australia was expected to feature, but the incredible pace of the race caught them all by surprise. The national champ able to stick with the lead group throughout the 124-kilometre event, but just didn't have the legs to bring her home, as Sweden's Suzanne Lundskog took the title. 25th place. A tough way to end the day for the hard-working Australian champ.
I could not believe how fast the race was. There was not one solitary moment of relief for the whole race. And
This wasn't just a protest outside the Mater today, it was a declaration of war against the potential privatisation of the hospital. 150 Health Services Union members on strike after the state government began the search for a private backer to redevelop the site in a public-private partnership.
The members just felt that they're going ahead without consultation. They don't really care what we think.
The 24-hour stoppage lasted just 6 hours after the domestic staff were directed to return by the Industrial Relations Commission. A strike seen as unnecessary because expressions of interest are yet to be received.
And of course that needs to be analysed before any decisions can be made. So at this point in time, I guess the action is a little bit preemptive and speculative.
Health Minister Morris Yemmer is now firmly in the sights of Newcastle Trades Hall Council. He's been asked to urgently meet with the unions to discuss the return of the Mater's $80 million of state funding or risk further industrial unrest. And just how the state government intends to find the Mater's private partner has now become clearer, with Hunter Health's Newcastle strategy partner Lend-Lease appointed to handle private sector interest in the project.
A bit of a surprise actually. It just proves the point that Hunter Area Health or even the New South Wales Department of Health can't handle their own tender process. They've actually got a contract out, they're contracting out.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Barrow Bolo finally has something to crow about.
It's only our second state championship here in about 54 years. So.
Bob Dunn, Mick Beasley and 15-year-old Tim Twining won the state triples at Sydney St John's Park, beating East Cessnock 24-16 in an all-hunter final.
Playing them is good because they're a good young group too, which is what the game's all about at the moment.
For Bob, winning a state championship has been a lifelong dream, emulating his father's win in the state pairs for Denman in 1940. But a lot of the kudos for the victory is going to Tim. The Year 10 student has only been bowling for 18 months and never expected to have this amount of success so early. But his two partners say he played like an old pro.
A big effort from him. He's only been playing 18 months and he led very well away, and he played against some very experienced players, and none of them put anything over him. He was exceptional. Yeah.
The first game I was nervous for about first 5 ends and then just went away. Just felt better after that, yeah.
But there's little chance of the trio defending its title in 2004. Mick is considering sitting out a year, while Bob will more than likely change clubs, leaving Tim with the task to continue his meteoric rise in competition bowls. Cullen Robinson, NBN News. The last couple of Soccer League seasons have been disappointing for Northern New South Wales. The team has had an abundance of ability, but because of its youth has lacked much needed experience, though Pride coach Mark Jones thinks this season will see a change.
We decided 5 years ago that we start afresh, start with the young ones, develop them through. We got results last year at the World Youth Cup where they come 5th in the world and we had 5 of our girls in it, so hopefully now we're looking for a transfer to the senior team.
I think previous years we've been a lot younger and experienced. Now we've got some experience behind us. We're going to go into a positive and hopefully come out with a good win.
Amber Nielsen will again captain the team. It's a job the 18-year-old has carried for 3 years. And the midfielder has extra motivation this season. Not only is selection for next year's Olympics a goal, but there's the matter of being overlooked for the Matildas at the World Cup earlier this month.
After all the training and hard work, I think you're always going to be disappointed, but it can only ever make you work harder or play harder to get back into the team and show them you can be there.
The Pride's match against the Sapphires kicks off at 5:15 tomorrow in Newcastle. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Securing a block of land or a house in the Shire of Cessnock is becoming increasingly difficult. Properties are being snapped up almost as quickly as they're being listed.
We've always been on the doorstep of the vineyards, but there's so much more opportunity now. It's become a fashionable place.
Council has also experienced an increase in development applications for residential and commercial properties, the number for September jumping to a record high of 200. While it's only in the construction phase, the vintage estate is already proving a major attraction for investors and homeowners.
We also look at the opportunities from employment with major development out in the vineyards, which establishes an employment base which then supports residential development.
Meantime, plans for a resort at the old Stanford Main underground mine at Paxton will be amended. International resort group Amman is considering downsizing the current proposal to include just a handful of luxury villas.
They believe that the site has some unique attributes, especially with regards to the wetland and the vegetation, and they believe that there will be significant tourism that will want to take advantage of that.
Colleen West, NBN News. To say Madeleine Horban is angry would be an understatement.
I think it's degrading to be put into one bedroom with a man you don't know, you're not married to, you do not even know his name.
That's exactly what happened to the 62-year-old retiree when she was rushed to the Mater Hospital on Wednesday suffering severe stomach pains. Mrs Horban was stabilised in the emergency department before being transferred to a room containing a male patient.
I would have rather preferred to be in the corridor or on the floor.
After making a complaint, Mrs. Horban was moved to another double room, this time with a female patient. While she applauds the speedy action of hospital staff, Mrs. Horban says she should never have been placed in that predicament. Mater Hospital staff say that while they try to avoid these types of situations, they're often unpreventable, a shortage of beds leaving them few options.
We're an acute hospital. Most of our patients are admitted via the emergency department, and there are occasions where unfortunately we do have to mix the sexes in 4-bedded rooms.
It's hoped the proposed redevelopment of the Mater will help alleviate the problem with the establishment of more single rooms. Colleen West, NBN News.
In terms of both financial reward and ranking, the Branxton Pro-Am has long been important for professionals. 12 of the 13 top money earners on the New South Wales Order of Merit were in the field. Winner of that last year, Jeff Wagner, knows all about success here as well, with back-to-back Pro-Am wins at Branxton in '99 and 2000. 2 strokes off the pace at the start of today's final round, Stephen Jeffress soon halved the gap, holing a birdie putt on the first. After carding a 5-under par round yesterday, overnight leader Aaron Burns was looking hot as well with putter in hand. The Gunnedah Pro picking up where he left off with some neat work on the green to make sure his lead was going to be tough to catch. Many may have wanted to be at the beach, but these kite surfers mostly stayed above the waves today. The Kite Fest wound up at Stockton after another great day of conditions, but the wind power idea looks to have caught on, with one competitor grabbing a free ride home as well.
Amanda Jinks was critically injured in the same accident which claimed the life of her 37-year-old sister, Karen.
I have no will anymore. I've lost the most precious thing in my life.
The sisters were returning from shopping on the afternoon of December 29 last year when their car was hit by Lee Manane's station wagon in the Lake Macquarie suburb of Mount Hutton. Other motorists reported he'd been driving aggressively. He'd already run another car off the road in what District Court Judge David Shillington described as one of the worst examples of driving on the roadway that one could encounter. Lee Manane returned a blood alcohol reading of 0.171, a blood test revealing he'd also taken marijuana and had enough speed in his system to put him in the toxic to lethal range. Manane admitted to taking the substances but said he couldn't remember getting behind the wheel, only coming to after the crash. I was sitting inside my car wondering what I'd done. Manane was sentenced to 6 years jail but could be out in 4. The sentence is cold comfort to Amanda Jinks, who's been caring for her sister's son since the accident.
So I've got, a 13-year-old boy at home that hasn't got his mother, whereas he can go home to his mother.
Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Warners Bay, Swansea and Marks Point bowling clubs will now be permitted to buy the land they occupy from Lake Macquarie Council. Council says ownership will give clubs greater long-term security and at the same time generate more than $1 million in revenue.
Obviously it gives us the chance to use those funds to buy other community land around the lake that the people can use.
Management of the Valentine Bowling Club Cooperative was also hopeful it too could buy the land occupied by the club, but council decided it would not rezone the site. Instead, the council will lease the land to the club for 21 years.
Totally disappointed in the council and their attitude. As I said before, I feel we've been discriminated against. We don't feel that our land is any more valuable than the other clubs.
Council admits none of the bowling club sites can undergo major developments as they're restricted because of their zoning. Meanwhile, it seems a hotel plan for Caves Beach may finally be approved next week.
There's a very good report being prepared by the council planners that seem to satisfy most of the community concerns, and hopefully the council will see it in that light next Monday night.
The $4.7 million hotel will include several bars, a bistro and a bottle shop. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The front end of this Mitsubishi van was written off when it slammed into the side of a bus at the intersection of Nelson Bay Road and Williamtown Drive just before 9 this morning. The Port Stephens bus was leaving Newcastle Airport to resume its journey to Newcastle. The driver of the van was trapped for nearly an hour until his release by rescue personnel. San Clemente High School students Bethany Hunt and Ellie Balcombe were among the 20 passengers on the bus.
I saw the van coming, I thought it was going to slow down and I didn't worry. And then all these old ladies were saying, oh, slow down, stop. And then I was like, oh my God. And then we hit and I was hit where my back, like where I was sitting.
Despite initial shock, the passengers quickly provided first aid for the trapped motorist.
We saw the car and it was pretty bad, so everyone was getting out towels and trying to find tools just to give him an ease. Got the newspapers out to hold the window because that was smashed.
The van driver was rushed to John Hunter Hospital suffering arm, leg and possible head injuries. Gary Blair, NBN News.
A volunteer firefighter for 6 years, Brendan Hoken turned fire starter on October 15 last year. Using his cigarette lighter, the 24-year-old set a blaze near vineyards in Pecolban before returning with rural fire service crews to fight the outbreak. Newcastle District Court heard Hoken initially denied setting the fire, but later admitted his guilt, telling police, "I have got a problem. I lit the fire. I don't know why. I just did." A psychologist found he was suffering from depression and the act was probably a cry for help. Judge Ralph Coulahan accepted Hoken was of otherwise good character, but said there is no doubt that the offender knew what he was doing, knew that it was wrong. The judge said it's not often that offenders are caught in these kind of cases, and that while in terms of seriousness this offence fell into the middle range, there must be a deterrent to others. Brendan Hoken will be eligible for parole in 4 months. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
We love you, Conrad. Oh, yes, we do. We love you, Conrad, and we'll be true. When you're not near us, we're blue. Oh, Conrad, we love you. Very nice.
When the Newcastle Harness Racing Club opened its Broadmeadow track in 1989, pacing critics believed it to be one of the best venues in the business. 14 years on, and the club will host its 500th meeting this weekend, marking the beginning of the local harness racing Spring Carnival.
November, December here is when our racing's at its peak, kicking off here this Saturday night, Melbourne Cup Day. We have a race meeting here, culminating probably with the $50,000 Tooheys Mile on the 15th of November.
The $50,000 event is an annual feature on the club's calendar, with this year's race shaping up to be quite the state of origin.
We're going to have the current Australian champions. We're hoping to have a West Australian, so a Victorian, a Queenslander and the New South Welshman. So they're coming from far and wide. I really think overall it'll be the strongest field we've ever had.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Improvements to the Carrington boat ramp are planned by Waterways, and the Newcastle Rowing Club hopes to build a clubhouse on the foreshore nearby. But locals want an overall plan for the shoreline.
We believe that it's something where there needs to be a grand plan drawn up so that as development goes on, everything can be drawn up to that potential.
The group has its own beautification plans for the area and is lobbying Newcastle Council to have a parcel of land next to the bridge rezoned so something other than a warehouse could be built on it.
We've actually spoken to dozens and dozens of people who launch small boats into that area, and they come from all over Newcastle and a lot from the Lake Macquarie area just to launch boats to use the harbour. So it's not really just a Carrington issue, it's a Newcastle issue.
Known as Newcastle's famous tram, the unusual-looking vehicle daily ferries tourists around the city's attractions. But one of the highlights for most is the madcap driver, Toby. After a career driving government buses, Toby shot to renown behind the wheel of the tram. But years of driving has taken its toll.
Seriously, I've done some fairly bad damage to my hip with the gear change. People don't understand when you go around town here, it's about 300 something gear changes per trip and you're braking and all that. And after 7.5 years, my hip refuses to get better while I'm here, so unfortunately I'm going to take some time off.
He'll make his last run in a week's time, and while the tram will continue with a new team of drivers, for many it just won't be the same.
Very good tour leader. That guy there, he told us everything about it, and very, very nice.
And we've tried to show people that, yeah, this isn't the place for the steelworks anymore. This is a place of beautiful beaches and buildings and really nice people. And can I take this opportunity to thank the people of Newcastle for their support?
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
With the entertainment centre off limits this morning, the Pirates shot around at the old home of Newcastle basketball. Chris Harriman is still getting used to his new role as starting point guard, and his learning curve simply continues tonight against one of the league's greatest in Ricky Grace.
Playing someone like Ricky's, it's an honour first of all. I grew up watching Ricky play. I got a lot of respect for his game.
The man himself is used to being the one to stop, but he'd prefer his side got going tonight. Perth is winless from 3 games this season, and for a team that finished second last year, it's becoming something of a sore point amongst teammates.
I think tension is good. If anyone should be relaxed at this stage of being 0-3, well, something's wrong with them. So, no, there has been a bit of tension, but I think it's good tension.
There's been little good about the Pirates' defence so far in its maiden season, as that elusive win continues to tease.
We can't really control Perth, we can control ourselves. So hopefully if we go out and play defence and do what we have to do on offence, we'll take care of the business.
These days, it's not just dangerous conditions that surf lifesavers have to worry about. Increased costs, namely insurance, has come as a major hit to clubs which already fend for themselves. All 1,300 branch clubs received much needed financial assistance today, but it's the backing of the first ever Hunter Academy of Sport Surf Life Saving Squad that will help foster long-term survival.
The Academy is trying to develop them and make them a little bit better. So we've got some wonderful competitors that aren't in this Academy, but the ones that are, we see potential for them, not only in competition, but also with administration, coaching and the future of our surf life saving movement.
Today's carnival at Stockton will go a long way to select those who will represent the branch later this year, but it was the boats that stood out today. It was a real test of endurance too for the second round of the Regional Surfboat Series. Swansea Belmont's men's A crew, the only one to catch the one that counted in their heat, but it wasn't enough to overrun Pacific Palms or Caves Beach for the overall round win.
On a day of remembrance and hope, news of what could be a major advance in the war against breast cancer.
This is a threshold. It's threshold research as important as any in the last 25 years.
Backed by a $500,000 donation from Avon, the Australian-New Zealand Breast Cancer Trials Group will examine tumour samples before and after treatment.
In that way we can learn which genes are important for the tumour growth. Then the next step is to block those and switch on the good genes.
It's a way forward, announced on a day when the Hunters celebrated a milestone 10th annual breast cancer breakfast. It's been a decade of remarkable change.
Particularly in the awareness that people are not frightened to talk about breast cancer anymore.
And according to a research pioneer, the outlook for sufferers has never been better.
Not only have we got improved treatment, we've got the option of prevention, and we've got a very good early detection program.
But there's still much work to be done, this so-called topless car wash putting some model muscle into today's fundraising efforts. Despite the title, no one got their gear off, but motorists did donate to have the models and actors crews set up to clean cars, top and all. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
It's not so much performance, but results, which has bothered coach Ian Crook the last 2 weeks. He wants a 2-game losing streak to end and needs experienced bodies on the park to help. Peter Sekenis will return from suspension, while Milan Blagojevic looks certain to start as well after a calf problem. But captain Robbie Middleby is still touch and go.
This was two weeks before the end of the season. I think we'd push it, but we've got a bye next week, and I'm not gonna push it and have him pull up and be out for 4 to 6 weeks.
Therefore, the skipper must complete the next 2 sessions this week at full pace or sit out. He's been named in an extended squad today with youth players Peter McPherson and Tom Lieberson on standby, while Joe Wheelhouse and Tom Willis are unavailable due to the Young Socceroos tour. That leaves John Perosh in front of goal in what's been an indifferent start for the keeper.
He said there we've conceded 7 goals and straight away people look at the keeper. We made bad decisions in front of JP at the weekend.
He'll have 5 weeks to cement his spot while Willis is away.
The major award firmly in their grasp. 3 of the 4 members of dance group On reflected today on a big night. They picked up 2 gongs and a recording deal with ABC Music.
Rather than me sort of opening my wallet and paying for the receipt myself, someone else is going to finance it for us, which is going to be a great relief.
Seen here performing at last year's NBN Telethon, the band's now set to record its 2nd CD. Rockers Muzzy Pep also featured highly last night with 2 awards. Across 17 categories, musicians from all styles were showcased, country to classical. In just its 2nd year, the Music Awards received hundreds of entries. For the likes of On, it could be the start of big things.
It'll just keep setting standards, I think, which will be great for Newcastle.
Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Meet Minehunter Junior. When one of the Navy's 6 Huon-class Minehunter ships detects what could be a submerged mine, one of these unmanned remote subs, fitted with a camera and sonar, is sent down for a closer look. It also carries a payload of 50 kilograms of TNT, just enough to blow up the mine, clearing the way for shipping. Fledgling hunter company Advanced Technology Systems at Thornton has secured the deal to maintain the Navy's fleet of 12 Swedish-built subs, each worth $1.2 million.
We work on the maintenance, we train the Navy crews in how to maintain them, we're looking at training the Navy pilots, and we also do the ongoing engineering and support for the system into the future.
The contract is a spin-off from Newcastle's billion-dollar Minehunter contract, and there was no shortage of skilled local people up to the task.
We've been working with a number of local hunter companies, and we've been able to hire very good staff from the university, engineering graduates from the university, and local technicians.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Senior Constable Michael Sorby awarded a Commissioner's commendation for his arrest of a gunman at Whitebridge. It happened more than 4 years ago, but the memories are still clear and painful.
I relive it quite often.
His partner was injured when the offender opened fire. They returned shots and disarmed the gunman. Senior Constable Sorby says he was just doing his job, but he's proud to be recognised.
A lot of the community doesn't realise what police actually do, but it's nice to get thanked occasionally.
An appropriate end too to his policing career, having decided to move on after 17 years in the force. Another prestigious honour for Police Rescue's Sergeant Alan Woodhams and Senior Constable Craig Bryan for their actions when called to a building collapse on the old BHP site.
It's a risk you take, it's a measured risk. You don't just rush in blindly.
One man died in the accident, the police rescue crews successful in helping many others. The awards were among dozens handed out to local officers today and the valuable volunteers and policing recruits. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
This is the scene that confronted logging contractor Darryl Armfield and his workers when they arrived this morning at the plantation timber site they're currently working in the Wattigan forest.
I was pretty disappointed and sort of lost for words, like how could someone do this, you know?
The excavator had been broken into and then used to roll another piece of timber harvesting equipment on its side. Engine damage to the excavator is believed to have possibly prevented 2 other machines from also being turned over. It's the latest in a series of attacks on the Armfield's equipment in recent months, which has included the theft of several thousand litres of diesel fuel. The halt to work and the damage expected to cost the family business tens of thousands of dollars.
We sort of don't know what's wrong with the excavator until we get the fingerprints done and we can move it and sort of start things up and see what's wrong. Could run into thousands of dollars.
State Forest has become so concerned about vandalism and poor public behaviour in the Wattigans that it's about to provide police with trail bikes so officers can patrol the area at weekends. Gary Blair, NBN News. The Watagans are a jewel in the Hunter's environmental crown. In addition to being a recreational mecca, the area also has forest used for timber production. Morisset High pupils Nathan Hunt, Drew Rogan and Lachlan Amy put the area's sustainable management under the microscope as their entry in the GeoQuest Australia competition. It's a challenge for Year 10 to 12 high school students to investigate a real-world problem in their community and present the findings on the internet. The Morisset Trio's work impressed the National Judging Panel, which jointly awarded them first prize along with an entry from a Melbourne private school.
It's more of a reward, actually, because just completing the website on its own and, having fun doing it was such an award, and this was just something extra.
And on the question of sustainable management, the boys concluded the Watagans are in good hands.
Well, from State Forest's side of things, it is very sustainable, and we're very impressed at the way areas do recover after timber harvesting.
They now hope their research will open the way for a more informed public debate on the future management of the national park and forests. Gary Blair, NBN News.
For years, aircraft noise has been a hot topic for people living near the Williamtown RAF base and the Saltash air weapons range. Now the Department of Defence has released a report known as the Australian Noise Exposure Forecast.
The government recognises that when you fly high-performance jets around an area, it's going to have some impact on the community.
The report identifies the levels of noise and its impact on residents since the introduction of the Hawk fighter jets last month.
So by definition, it is louder and people experience more noise than most civilian aircraft that they would encounter in other experiences of aviation.
The document will also assist Port Stephens Council to plan future development.
The ANEF is a planning tool that can assist the councils in making their determinations about planning applications that they receive.
Port Stephens Council says the report is consistent with its current policy on aircraft noise. However, the Department of Defence is still urging potential homebuyers in the Williamtown and Saltash areas to consult with Council before they invest. The report is available for public inspection at Port Stephens Council and 3 local libraries. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The arrival of Dr Hazim Dahir at the Karua surgery is the sight that locals have waited almost 2 years to see, and it's an appointment the overseas trained GP has patiently waited to begin.
Yes, I'm very glad. I'm very happy to start the job in here. Although it took it started from March this year and is just finished today. Yeah, so it's the longest journey.
The surgery was a busy place as Dr Dahir settled into his new surroundings. The wife of the town's previous GP, Dr Stan Wickman, helped man the reception desk to begin the new era for her late husband's practice. For local pharmacist Ruth Hawkins, there was relief the community campaign to find a new doctor had finally achieved its objective.
It's been very tough, it's very frustrating. A lot of red tape to try and get through, a lot of government departments to negotiate with, and yes, it's been very difficult.
While Karua now has its doctor, there are other hunter communities that continue to wait for an improvement in their GP situation. However, Dr Dahir says there are more overseas trained doctors who are willing to help address the region's GP shortage. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Well, there were so many people here I didn't see what was happening until they'd all gone, and I realised they'd nearly all sold.
In its heyday, you'd be battling to find a seat inside the Shortland RSL club. But today, a very different picture is painted behind the walls of this ageing building, dwindling numbers and a $400,000 debt now threatening its future. The club was placed into the hands of receivers last month and now has just 45 days to clear its debts or close.
There's going to be a lot of us not real happy, you know. Small as our meeting place gone.
Well, we have a lot of elderly people around and they live on their own, and it's a place that they can come, have a game of bingo and hoi.
The local community is doing what it can to ensure the doors remain open. A donation wall and family fun day on Sunday are among a number of fundraising initiatives aimed at breathing life back to the club. Negotiations are also underway between the custodians of the RSL, the sub-branch and a local builder for the construction of 40 accommodation units to be built on club land.
It's an injection of funds into the club plus a refurbishment so that we can become competitive with other local clubs in the area, which at the moment, if you look around, we're just not.
Colleen West, NBN News. It's become a fashion accessory for young Australians. Research by the Cancer Council showing 50% of women aged 18 years and over prefer a tan. Whether you get it baking, working or in a solarium, the risks of skin cancer are equally as high. If detected earlier, there is help at hand.
Statistics are saying that around about 90% of them are actually cured by the initial primary excision of their disease.
Paul Corbett wasn't so lucky. The 56-year-old Newcastle man lost his battle with cancer in April this year.
I never thought that it would happen, that he would die from something that's significantly what you think is small.
As part of Skin Cancer Awareness Week, the Cancer Council and Hunter Melanoma Foundation have launched hard-hitting campaigns aimed at taking the sting out of the growing killer.
The message slip, slop, slap is probably getting a little bit dated, and people have heard it so many times that it's like background noise and they don't take too much notice of it.
Colleen West, NBN News.
This exhibition in Newcastle is offering the work of well-known and pricey Australian artists like Albert Namatjira, Sidney Nolan and Brett Whiteley, works that have proven to be a good investment.
A lot of people who bought these works bought them back in the 60s or 70s, so prices were very different at that time. We now reflect 20, 30 years on, and prices have grown dramatically, and particularly in the last 10 years.
This street scene by Robert Dickerson was worth $17,000 10 years ago. It's now offered for $75,000. Charles Blackman's Blue Nude was bought for $50,000 a decade ago and is now likely to fetch more than 4 times that price. And Blackman's Red Tablecloth from $85,000 to $235,000. But financial advisors say buying art isn't a magical formula for making money.
Artworks are no different to shares or to property or any investment asset in that regard. Clients have got to do their research, got to do their homework, make sure they're buying the right things at the right price at the right time.
And those buying art as part of self-managed superannuation funds have been warned that while you can buy as many pieces as you like, only art to the value of 5% of your total super can be hung on the walls.
So hanging a work of art on your wall, in your lounge room wall now, is a benefit you're receiving now, not for retirement. So it's a fairly fundamental concept of superannuation, and the regulators don't want that to be breached.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
On face value, the rapidly expanding Rutherford Industrial Estate might not look like a major employer. However, latest Hunter Valley Research Foundation figures show these small to medium-sized businesses are now a major player in the Hunter economy.
It's very much focused on small to medium-sized enterprises, and really they've been the engine of growth within the region, which has achieved perhaps a level of unemployment which is the lowest that we've seen since 1986, when regional labour force figures were being released.
And the foundation believes the key to the sector's future will be strong education and training facilities.
There may be at times where some of the demands for courses may wax and wane, but it's really important to have those basic skills there and the ability for people to access those skills locally.
Federal Labor frontbencher Mark Latham has closely watched the Hunters' revival from industry restructuring and backs Dr Paradise's call.
Well, the whole example in the Hunter shows that jobs based on machine and muscle power are disappearing. The jobs of the future are from brain power. And how do we invest in that? It's got to come through good schools, good TAFE colleges, good universities.
Gary Blair, NBN News. The inner Newcastle suburb of Maryville was wallowing in the result of the downpour by mid-morning. Excessive runoff and a king tide in local waterways combined to give McMichael Street residents waterfront views. Motorists were left with little choice but to make a splash as they drove through the area. The deluge also took its toll on Francis Greenway High School. Classes were abandoned after leaking roofs saw numerous classrooms inundated. The incident forced the school's Parents and Citizens Committee to go public with its demand for better maintenance.
Well, we have damage to the whole 4 blocks, A, B, C and D, and we only have enough money to maintain the roof on 1 block. So the other 3 will be continually water damaged until more funds become available.
Nearby Beresfield Golf Course was another public facility out of action because of the rain. The Lower Hunter State Emergency Service received a number of calls for help overnight following flash flooding in the Newcastle and Maitland areas. However, despite some substantial falls, the SES says it hasn't had an impact on the region's river systems. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Hang on, wasn't it Gary Blair?
Chris McLean is one teenager who is a master of his domain, a 1 kilometre wildlife corridor which he established.
This is called hotbush Dodonea, and when the pommies came out here, they used to use it to make a low-quality beer because they didn't have a real lot of hops around.
He set up his own land care group, which is run by the students of Toronto High School. Together, they've planted more than 4,000 natives.
And it's been mulched and planted, and it's turning into a wildlife haven now.
Today, Chris received a Future Leaders Environment Award.
You just realise that he's such an inspiration, not only to young people, but to his community in general.
It'll help me in the future. It also gives me an opportunity to undertake environmental research, and I've chosen a project on Kangaroo Island radio tracking echidnas.
Chris has now finished his HSC, but he's confident his peers will carry on with his legacy.
Something that's wild and natural and got a moral obligation to protect the environment.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Just what do you take to eat on one of the coldest places on Earth?
A high calorie count to try and ward off the cold. Lots of chocolate, lots of really high nutritious, long release, slow release carbohydrates, things like that.
No, it's not a grocery grab, but you'd be excused for thinking it was. Tony Mowbray and crew will take 140 packets of noodles, 70 litres of long-life milk as a backup supply, and 60 family-sized blocks of chocolate, just to name a few. They leave for Antarctica on Wednesday, making the 4,000-kilometre trip to finish at Mawson's Hut.
It's going to be cold, it's going to be windy, but in saying that, all that brings to the experience of Antarctica.
Well, my wife has found it hard. We work together 24 hours a day, and we're together 24 hours a day, and to be apart, and it's going to be very hard for her.
Tony says each member has a part to play, and for 21-year-old comedian Matthew McFadgen, is expected to provide the laughs, among other things.
If you're the youngest, you get all the jobs to do. I'm the official tea maker, the mast climber, the cook, the chef, the lots.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News. Where people with disabilities were shown what it's like to captain a sailability boat off Little Beach, all part of Disability Day celebrations. The Shire's Council says the region's disability rates are higher than the national average, with today's picnic designed to give carers a break. While some tested their need for speed, others could be found on the beach, making the most of a near-picture perfect day.
This is the dream. This is what we've been working for. It's what everyone wants.
The two men were the only people working inside the Scone abattoir when the ammonia gas leak happened just after 10 this morning. Emergency crews quickly responded to the incident, treating the men who had breathing difficulties because of the highly toxic fumes. They were rushed to the Scone hospital. Hazardous materials firefighters then donned chemical protection suits to go into the building and isolate the leak. It was sealed off by late morning. Extra care was also taken to ensure those trying to contain the site weren't affected by the fumes. But as the afternoon wore on, concern grew for the two men involved.
It may not be a lucky escape. Their injuries may turn out to be more severe than first thought.
That proved to be the case because of the serious nature of their injuries. One of the men was flown to Sydney's Concord Hospital, the other to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital. Emergency crews spent the afternoon airing the building to remove the remaining gas so the area could be declared safe. Lyndall Derrig, NBN News. Some were determined to ensure they got a park before heading in to face the crowds of Christmas shoppers. At Charlestown Square, for some people it seemed, regardless of their budget, they just wanted to get their shopping done.
No, I didn't stick to a budget. I've sort of blown the budget. But anyway, we'll make up for it. Plastic's very handy. I don't have a credit card. I wouldn't trust myself to get one.
But others say they're watching their purses carefully, ready to snap up a bargain.
I always set myself a budget, so keeping to that.
It's been pretty good so far, pretty cheap. I've grabbed the specials when they're there and it's been great.
Retailers could also be thankful for the Christmas spending spree going on at Westfield Kotara, with a large variety of gifts being bought. The majority of shops at major shopping centres are open until 5:30 on Christmas Eve. Lyndall Derrig, NBN News.
If United players ever thought they needed a recovery session, it was today. 2 games in 3 days meant everyone was sore, and then there were the injured. Robbie Middleby will be out for up to a month after tearing his calf muscle, while Adam Griffiths requires further scans to assess knee damage. With others still in question, coach Ian Crook needs Christmas to come early.
Take the 3 points right now, mate. And, you know, look, we need it now. And the last four or 5 games, we've put some really good performances together. We now need to string some points together.
Things started well enough last night against the Northern Spirit, despite execution again proving a problem. Fijian international Asala Massey didn't miss his first chance, with a header to open the scoring. Just before half-time, a Spirit foul gave the striker a chance to add a second. He obliged with a driving shot, but celebration soon turned to confusion as referee Eddie Lenny disallowed the goal.
But for me, if you get kicked up here, it's a tackle, it's a direct free kick, and Asala's goal should stand.
It was the turning point. Still in the match, the Spirit pressured, and an own goal turned it into a 1-1 draw and simply added to the visitors' heartache. The team will now welcome back Damien Brown this Sunday against Marconi, while Jobe Wheelhouse will be eased back to training this week in the hope he can dive back into action as well. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Armed with placards and fighting words, these adults and children set up in downtown Cessnock trying to tell others about their concerns. Telstra is planning to build a mobile phone tower at North Rothbury, but residents say they don't want it.
They can't guarantee that in 20 years from now our community is not going to suffer from clusters of cancers and other health problems.
A petition and letters were presented to Cessnock Mayor John Clarence. A development application for the tower is currently before the council.
We live in a country area and there is a lot of space around us where this tower could possibly go, but it doesn't need to go so close to our local township.
This is where the 26-metre CDMA tower will be built. Residents say almost everyone in the town is opposed to the tower. However, Telstra says some of its business customers have requested better service, but just who they are remains a mystery. Telstra says there are no definitive studies to suggest the tower will be harmful to the health of residents, but locals aren't convinced.
Well, we're going to do our best and we'll fight it to the bitter end. This is just round one, really.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.